news all around for Tata Motors. Pull that stock up. It's done so well, and of course those numbers for November that trickled in, showing that there's been a 62% increase in global sales, has really done wonders on that stock. I think a couple of re-ratings there as well. ET Now's Vishal Bhargav now joined us to give us a quick perspective and a roundup of those numbers. Vishal, is it just that low base effect that's come into action, or do you think there's more to it?
Well, parts of it essentially is in terms of low base effect, but what we have seen essentially in case of Tata Motors and especially Jaguar Land Rover is that genuine demand is picking up. You mentioned the number 62% in terms of the total Tata Motors sales. Just to give you the breakup in terms, CV sales on a global level are up 81% for the company. This is of course driven in terms of the type of demand that we have seen domestically, because in fact you recall Tata Motors domestic sales in the month of November were also up 81%. A very small chunk is essentially gone through exports in terms of CV sales for Tata Motors. In terms of Jaguar Land Rover, that's been the key component for Tata Motors. That has been a draggard over the last 1 year or so. JLR sales have picked up over the last 4 or 5 months, especially since September. And JLR sales are up 30% in the month of November. In that, Jaguar sales continue to actually be a bit disappointing, down about 2%. But it's Land Rover that sales are up 45%. And clearly between Jaguar Land Rover has been the dominant partner in terms of Jaguar Land Rover. Passenger vehicle sales for the company, of course, up 50% at about 42,000 units for the company. Just to put this number into perspective that we are seeing November, you mentioned the aspect in terms of low base effect. I think you probably get a good summary if you look at the April to November numbers for Tata Motors, where global sales are up just 4%. So clearly what we had seen from April to probably June, where sales were sluggish even in terms of CV sales, Jaguar Land Rover sales were down, and since then we've seen a pickup, which essentially has resulted in this marginal gain in terms of unit sales rise for the company, up 4%. JLR sales from April to November are actually down 32%. So clearly that overhang of the first 3 months of the year showing up in terms of JLR sales, and of course global CV sales are up 16%, because right from June onwards we've seen a sequential recovery as well in case of Tata Motors. On a year-on-year basis, of course, the gains have been stupendous. 81% I mentioned in the month of November on a year-on-year basis, but even on a month-on-month basis, they have been marginal rises. 1.4% in the month of November on a marginal basis for Tata Motors. So clearly things are looking pretty positive for Tata Motors. Finally, things are falling in place altogether, be it CV sales or Jaguar Land Rover. And clearly brokerages are also getting optimistic. You mentioned JP Morgan upgrading the stock, but there have been other brokerages also doing that. We had Anand Rathi actually putting the stock at about 837 rupees per share. Clearly the stock is about 720 or so. Remember, the stock has gone up from about 150 levels to about 720. So that's been a very, very remarkable performance from Tata Motors.